The knock came at exactly 9:17 p.m., sharp and unexpected, slicing through the quiet of the house like a warning. Emily Carter froze in her kitchen, one hand on the counter, the other still holding her phone. No one ever came by this late. Not anymore. Her husband had been gone for months, and the house had learned how to stay silent. The rain outside was heavy, loud enough to hide footsteps. Emily's heart beat faster as she walked toward the door. For a brief second, she wondered if she should pretend she wasn't home. That thought alone surprised her. She had never been afraid of her own front door before. When she opened it, the porch light revealed three familiar faces, soaked jackets, tired smiles, and eyes filled with hesitation. Mark stood in front, tall and steady. Ethan was beside him, holding a cardboard box that smelled like warm food. Luke lingered slightly behind, hands in his pockets, looking unsure. "Hey, Emily," Mark said. "Sorry to show up like this." Emily blinked. Daniel's friends. All three of them. Her husband's closest circle since college. The people who knew his stories better than she did sometimes. "Our power went out," Ethan added quickly. Storm took the lines down. Daniel said. "He said you shouldn't be alone tonight." The words landed heavier than they meant to. You shouldn't be alone. Emily hadn't realized how much she was until that moment. She stepped aside without overthinking it. "Come in before you catch pneumonia." The door closed behind them, and just like that, the quiet cracked. The house felt smaller with people inside again, warmer. Wet shoes lined the entryway. Jackets were draped over chairs. The smell of rain mixed with food and candle wax. Emily suddenly felt aware of everything, her loose sweater, her tired eyes, the way she had stopped caring what time dinner was. They moved into the living room naturally, like they had done this 100 times before. Which years ago they had, back when Daniel was always home. Back when the house had a rhythm. Mark glanced around. "Looks the same," he said softly. Emily smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Feels different." No one argued. They ate quickly, talking fast, as if afraid the silence might return if they slowed down. The storm grew louder outside, thunder rolling low and distant. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied again. Luke leaned forward. "So, how are you really doing?" The question was simple, honest. Emily wasn't ready for it. "I'm fine," she said automatically, then stopped. She sighed. "I'm managing." That seemed enough. Luke nodded, accepting it without pushing. Ethan noticed the lamp in the corner flickering again. That thing's still acting up. Emily laughed softly. "It always does." Ethan stood, grabbed a screwdriver from his car, and fixed it in less than 5 minutes. No big moment. No announcement. Just care in action. Mark made tea in the kitchen without asking, humming under his breath. Daniel used to do that. The same tune. Emily watched from the doorway, feeling something twist in her chest, not desire. Not betrayal, just memory. When the lights finally went out for good, no one panicked. Mark lit candles. Luke checked the windows. Ethan joked about camping indoors. Their calm wrapped around Emily like a blanket she hadn't known she needed. They sat together in the living room, candlelight softening everything. Shadows danced on the walls. Outside, the rain pressed harder, relentless. Mark started telling a story about Daniel's first car. Ethan added details. Luke laughed at the right moments. Emily listened, smiling, but her thoughts drifted. She realized something uncomfortable and true. She felt safe. Not because they were protecting her, but because they saw her. They didn't treat her like something fragile or forbidden. They treated her like family. As the night deepened, conversation slowed. The storm showed no signs of stopping. Phones buzzed with alerts. Roads flooded. Power crews delayed. Mark checked his phone. "We might be stuck for a while." Emily nodded. "That's okay." The words came easily. They moved blankets to the couch, spacing themselves carefully, respectfully. No one touched her. No one crossed a line. That made it more intense in a quiet way. Emily stared at the ceiling, listening to their breathing, the rain, the house alive again with people inside. her mind filled with questions she didn't want answers to yet. When had loneliness become normal? When had she stopped asking for help? When had being strong started to feel so heavy? She thought of Daniel Beasy, distant, tired. She missed him. But she also missed herself. Luke spoke into the darkness. Daniel's lucky. Emily turned her head. Why? He has people who care enough to show up, Luke said. And a wife who keeps the door open. The words stayed with her long after the room fell quiet again. Sometime past midnight, the rain softened. The storm began to move on. But inside the house, something had already shifted. Emily closed her eyes, knowing one thing for certain. Letting them in was not a mistake. But she had no idea yet what that choice would change. The morning Daniel came home, Emily woke up before the sun. She hadn't slept well. Not because of guilt or fear, but because her mind kept replaying the night before. The storm. The candles. The way the house felt alive again. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the empty space beside her where Daniel should have been, when his key finally turned in the lock. The sound hit her like a wave. She stood quickly, smoothing her shirt, trying to look normal. The door opened and Daniel stepped inside, carrying a suitcase, his hair still damp from the airport rain. He looked different in the way a person does after a long time away. Not just physically, but emotionally. Like he had left one version of himself behind. "Hey," he said, voice soft. "You okay?" Emily nodded, but her throat felt tight. "Yeah, I'm okay." Daniel set his suitcase down and looked around the living room. The place was neat, but not empty. There were small signs of life everywhere. A mug left on the side table. A blanket folded on the couch. A book on the coffee table, one he recognized immediately. He picked it up and frowned. "Where did you get this?" Emily swallowed. "Ethan brought it. He said you used to read it a lot." Daniel's expression shifted. It wasn't anger. It was something like surprise. He walked toward the kitchen and opened the cabinet, checking the shelves like he was expecting to find something missing. The house didn't feel like the same place he'd left. It felt shared. Emily followed him quietly. "Daniel, we need to talk." Turn slowly. "We do." The first thing he asked wasn't about his job or the trip. It wasn't about the long nights or the distance. He asked, "Did they come over?" Emily nodded. "All three of them." Daniel stared for a moment, processing. "Mark, Ethan, and Luke." "Yes." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to say something harsh, but instead he just walked to the window and stared outside. The silence grew heavy. Emily felt her heart beat faster. She wasn't sure what he would do next. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Why?" Emily took a breath. She didn't want to lie. She didn't want to hide. "Because I was lonely. Because I needed someone. Because the storm made me feel like the world was closing in. They came in like friends. They didn't cross any lines. They helped." Daniel's shoulders dropped a little, as if he had been holding tension for weeks. "You were alone." "I was," Emily said. "And I didn't know how to ask for help." Daniel turned to face her. His eyes were calm, but there was a pain there. "I should have been here." Emily's voice softened. "You tried. You were working. You were doing what you had to do." Daniel stepped closer. "And you were doing what you had to do, too." He paused, then said the thing Emily didn't expect. "I'm not mad." Emily blinked. "You're not." Daniel shook his head. "I'm not mad that you let him in. I'm mad that I wasn't there to do it myself." The words hit Emily like a sudden rush of relief and sadness at once. She realized she had been bracing for anger, for accusation, for betrayal. Instead, Daniel was admitting his own failure. That was harder to hear than any accusation. He walked into the living room and sat down on the couch, still holding the book. "Tell me everything," he said. Emily sat beside him, careful not to sit too close. She started with the storm, then the knock, then the way the three men had acted. She told him how they fixed the lamp, how they made tea, how they laughed, how they talked about him like he mattered. She told him how it had felt to not be alone, Daniel listened without interrupting. He didn't ask for details he didn't need. He didn't question her loyalty. He just listened. When she finished, there was a long silence. Then Daniel said, "I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to be alone." Emily felt tears rise. She had expected a fight, but instead she got honesty. "I didn't want to bother you," she admitted. "I didn't want to feel like I was asking for too much." Daniel looked at her, and for the first time in months, Emily felt seen. "You're not a burden," he said. "You're my wife." He stood and walked to the kitchen, pulling out a fresh mug. He filled it with coffee, then handed it to her. "I missed this," he said quietly. "Missed being here." Emily took the mug, warming her hands around it. "I missed you," she said. Daniel nodded, but his face held something else, uncertainty. "So what happens now?" he asked. Emily didn't have a perfect answer. She didn't want to promise something she couldn't keep. She simply said, "We talk. We don't let things pile up. We don't let distance grow into silence." Daniel smiled faintly. "Okay." In the following days, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Daniel didn't act like a man who was suspicious or jealous. Instead, he made a choice that surprised Emily more than anything else. He thanked his friends. He texted Mark, Ethan, and Luke one evening. The message was simple. "Thank you for being there for Emily." He didn't say more. He didn't need to. The words were enough. The friends responded with short, supportive replies. They didn't ask for anything. They didn't push. They simply respected the boundary between friend and family. Emily watched Daniel's phone, feeling a strange warmth. She realized something important. The friendship between Daniel and his friends wasn't a threat. It was a strength. And it could be a strength for their marriage, too. A few weeks later, Daniel and Emily invited the three men over again. Not because Emily needed them, but because Daniel wanted them there. He wanted them to know they were welcome. He wanted to show Emily that he trusted her and trusted them. The evening was simple pizza, board games, laughter, the kind of comfort that comes from shared history. Daniel laughed more than he had in months. Emily felt her heart loosen, like a knot finally untweak. At one point, Mark looked at Daniel and said, "You should call her more." Daniel blinked, surprised. "What?" Mark shrugged. "You're always busy." "But she's here. She's real. Don't forget that." Ethan nodded. "Yeah. Don't let work become your life," Luke added. "She's not just waiting for you. She's living too." The words hit Daniel like a wake-up call. He looked at Emily, and his eyes were full of something he didn't hide this time: love and gratitude. Later that night, after the friends left, Daniel sat on the couch with Emily again. He took her hand, and this time he held it like he meant it. "I'm sorry I left you alone," he said. "I'm sorry I didn't see how hard it was." Emily squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner." Daniel leaned in and kissed her forehead. It was gentle, not dramatic, but it felt like a promise. A quiet promise that they would try harder. In the months that followed, their marriage didn't return to what it was before. It became something stronger, more honest, more open. Emily still had moments of loneliness, but she learned to ask for help. Daniel learned to be present. And the three friends became part of their life in a new way, not as a threat, but as a support system. Emily never forgot the night the storm hit. She never forgot the knock at the door. She never forgot the way her heart had felt when the house filled with voices again. And she never forgot what happened after that, because the most unbelievable part wasn't the storm. It wasn't the friends coming over. It wasn't even the fear of what might happen. The most unbelievable part was this: letting people in didn't ruin her marriage, it saved it.